So this was a really interesting game that I do want to talk about, but I want to talk about it from a different perspective and pose a question to you guys like I usually do. Are the Cowboys Super Bowl hopes still alive? Now, I think being the analyst and being the guy who talks about sports like I do on this channel, my love for the game and for any sport is stronger than my love for a team. And I want to preface this by saying I gained nothing from the Dallas Cowboys making it to the Super Bowl or winning the Super Bowl. But I want to know, because I'm about to present you some facts, I'm about to present you some information, and I want to know how you guys digest it. What do you think about the Cowboys based on their big time win today? Now, we got to look at this, and I want to start offensively because I think that Dak Prescott in his last two games, the guy's been nothing short of amazing. I'm not the biggest Dak Prescott fan because I've seen him in certain situations where the defense has played their tails off. I've done film breakdowns on this channel, especially last year in the divisional, where they got to that round and he laid a dud against the San Francisco 49ers. But I look at these last 2 weeks, and I think that he's been playing like a guy who's a top 10 quarterback in this league. I think he's been playing like a guy who can lead this team to some playoff wins. Now, talking about his stats, the guy was 25 of 31, 304 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, only 1 interception in the red zone. We're going to get to that because I can do without that one. But he took 3 sacks. And the thing about those 3 sacks, if you watch this game, it started off ugly. And I thought about it because I do like some things about the LA Rams. They have a very young defense. They got some pieces on offense. Puka is balling his tail off. But I looked at this and said, okay, Aaron Donald's getting after it. All of these guys are getting after it. You're starting off. You're getting sacked. There's no protection for Dak Prescott, but he settled in. That was huge to me because I'm seeing a guy amongst pressure early on in the game. He could have spiraled out of the game. He could have started throwing interceptions early. He could have started doing things uncharacteristic of a good quarterback, but he didn't do that. He settled in. And I think when we take that into account, we say, okay, now we got our defense. Now we got our special teams coming along to the party. They're playing their tails off. They're getting the football back, also scoring on those sides of the ball. So I'm looking at that and say, with that, we got Dak Prescott. If he's going to play like this, the ceiling is unmatched for a team like this. I want to talk about his targets. Some of the guys, he got the football too. And the first thing, we can't talk about receivers for the Dallas Cowboys without talking about CeeDee Lamb. 12 catches, 158 yards, a long of 26. And we're going to talk about why that's important, but 2 touchdowns, 14 targets. That's also notable. So to see what he's doing with the volume of what he's doing, you have 158 yards with a long of 26. That means you're consistently getting us first downs. You're consistently moving the chains. You're consistently getting open against man coverage, against quarters variations. I like to see that out of CeeDee Lamb. I think he's truly a 1. And the reason I think people don't look at him like a 1 is because he's a slot archetype. He's a guy that does a lot of his work inside the numbers, inside as the number 2 or the number 3 receiver. And some people say, okay, that's different than if you were outside on the island. You're getting the press. You're not getting off alignments and looking at different things like that. You have to be the guy with our best corner. It's me versus you. Line up on the numbers and go get it. I think we look at that and say we view some of those guys differently. We view Tyreek a little differently because he gets some of that work on the outside. We view guys like Stephon, Justin Jefferson a little differently. But in today's game, you got to understand, all of these guys, they line up as the 3, the 2, the X, the Y, and the Z. Because if you're that talented, you can get it done from all positions. And I say that to say, I saw early on in this game, he was lined up on the outside, got some work against the Kobe Durant. Shout out South Carolina. I'm from South Carolina, seeing the Kobe Durant out there. But I say that and say, okay, now I'm looking at it. And I say we have to respect this guy because of what he's doing. Also looking at the guys that came along with him, Brandon Cooks, 3 catches, 49 yards, had a touchdown. And we talked about this receiving group. We talk about these weapons. Oh, they got this guy. They got this guy, Michael Gallup, Brandon Cooks. He's now coming to the party. It hasn't been a lot of volume for those guys. It hasn't been a lot of yards for those guys. And I think they've been trying to get the running game going. You haven't seen as much volume in the passing game in general with this team unless they're down. But to see Brandon Cooks doing what he did today, to have a touchdown like he did today, this is a guy who's just a 1,000-yard receiver casually. Every year we have to pay attention to that. And I think now coming into it, he may not have 1,000 yards this year, but if he can be a solidified and trustable number 2 for Dak like he was today, that's something good that you have to work with. Jake Ferguson, though. You talk about Dalton Schultz, and Dalton Schultz is very good. He's been doing some good things for CJ over there in Houston. But when you got Jake Ferguson playing like he's playing, I think you have to pay attention to all of that and say, okay, Luke Shoemaker, he's the rookie out of Michigan. These guys have stepped up, and shout out to the tight ends coach because he has to bring these guys into the system. It's not easy to play tight end. You got to understand protections. You got to understand route running. You got to understand the run game. That's why a lot of tight ends transition into offensive minds in the game of football. But I like to see those guys doing what they did. Kevontae Turpin, he had a big time return, also had a catch for 13 yards. Overall, like I said, you love the passing game. Now, with the running game, and I think this can play into the question when we talk about, are the Cowboys Super Bowl hopes still alive? They haven't been able to run the football like they want to. Mike McCarthy talked about identity, and you say, okay, you play San Francisco, your biggest matchup to this point in the season. You didn't get the run game going in that game. You didn't really even try to get the run game going in that game. So I think that's something we have to say. Why are we saying all of these things but not acting upon them? Looking at it now, Tony Pollard, I think he's still getting healthy. It's been something that a lot of people have been saying, but had 12 carries, 53 yards, a pretty solid day today. It's just when we saw him last year, he was explosive every time he caught the football. I think about the guy who was running wheel touchdowns against the Minnesota Vikings, who was running touchdowns when Zeke came out of the game. That's the guy you still want to see, and I wonder, is he still in there somewhere, now being the featured back in this offense? But you got Rico Dotto. He had 5 for 18. CeeDee Lamb caught an extension of the run game out there. It's just good to see overall, but I think it could be much better with the run game over there in Dallas. And of course, they've had to really bring in some different mixtures on the offensive line. They've had different guys running in and out, but you look at it and say, okay, with the LA Rams, we're understanding that we're a defense who is extremely young, who did not have a good day in the secondary because they're young everywhere. The linebacker core is young. The secondary is young. They have young guys on the defensive line. And I think that just got attacked today. And when you get into those matchups, because the Philadelphia Eagles, they're about to be knocking on the door pretty soon. And when you play a team like the Philadelphia Eagles, you just want Dak to be more comfortable. You want him to ease into the game rather than trying to make his mark on the game, force his way into the game. But I think we come over to the defensive side, I'm more impressed with that than even the offense. Now, you have to think, and this is why we're going to have this conversation, are the Super Bowl hopes still alive? Because I want to talk about the scoring summary. They scored first, it was 7-0. It was 7-3 after the LA Rams. They came down, had a drive, kicked the field goal. And then after that, Daryl Green had a pick six. Now, it's funny when we talk about that pick six because Puka Nacua caught a play just the drive earlier against man coverage on Daryl Green, and he tried to undercut it, couldn't get there. Matthew Stafford had a great pass on that ball, but coming back to it, tries to get the football to Cooper Kupp on the left side of the field. Daryl Green, he comes and undercuts this one. Now he's taking it to the crib for 6. So even with Trayvon Diggs' injury, also speedy recovery to him, but even with that injury, seeing a Stephon Gilmore, seeing a Marquise Bell, a Jerron Kearse, a Malik Hooker, how they've just been able to transition and really mix and match those different guys in that back seven, I really like that, and hats off to Dan Quinn once again. We've talked about it multiple times. But for Matthew Stafford, I think you played a good offensive unit. Now, I want to actually check this out, because they had 24 rushes for 92 yards. Royce Freeman, he had 9 carries, 44. Darrell Henderson, 12 carries, 31. Kyron Williams, a big-time part of this team, he didn't suit up today, so you think that has to take a nick into their running game. That's something they look at and say, if we can get him the football, now we can get a little more explosive plays on the ground. Didn't have him, though, so I think that does go into it. But why I say this, and I say all these receivers, Cooper Kupp, Tutu Atwell, Tyler Higbee, all of the guys they have on the perimeter, you're playing a very good unit. And you look at this and say, when we get up on teams, now we get into a situation where the pass rush can feast. Now DeMarcus Lawrence, now Micah Parsons can get into that rover position. Now he's lining up over the center. You don't know where he's going. He can hit you with an inside move. He can come on a stunt. Somebody else can loop around. There's a lot of possibilities that Dan Quinn gets and that he's equipped with when they're playing with a lead. I think that the best thing San Francisco did is they got up, and then once they did that, they attacked the weaknesses which they saw in that secondary. Today, I really didn't see an opportunity for Matthew Stafford to get into that scenario. Now, the Dallas Cowboys only had 1 sack, but I think I pay attention to everything that happened in this game. Matthew Stafford had an interception. I want to check the fumbles real quick. Didn't have any fumbles for LA, but it's a lot of things that I'm looking at and say he was under constant pressure. Micah Parsons had a stamp on the game. These are all things that we have to put into the total basket when we say how good was the defense today. Now, Sam Williams, he had a big time punt block. I thought once he got that, he really blew the game open, blew the doors for Dak Prescott to come in. Now he's throwing dots into the end zone. Now he's succeeding in the red zone. They were 2 or 4 today. We've talked about their struggles within the red zone, but I think outside of that one interception that he had down there, now you look at it and say, okay, we see a team who's getting a little better within their offensive schemes in the red zone. So like I said, I think it was a very good offensive day outside of the one interception. Pretty crisp, good execution. You want to get the run game flowing just a little bit more. Now, that's going to come with the health of the offensive line, trying not to mix and match as much, guys, if you have to right now, but it's something that you have to say next man up. You can't control injuries in the game of football, but I want to get back to the defense, though, because I think the way those guys have stepped up, and I'm talking about Deron Bland, I'm talking about Ziggy on the interior, Mozzie Smith, he was a first-round pick, and he hasn't developed like we thought he would. I thought he would be a key player on the interior right now as soon as the season started, but it's taking him a little more time, and I think he has good guys to help. You got DeMarcus Lawrence, you got a Jonathan Hankins, you got a Ziggy who's playing really good this season, but I want to know what you guys think. If you think yes, that the Cowboys Super Bowl hopes are still alive, comment yes and give me a good reason as to why. If you think no, comment no and give me a good reason as to why. I think this is one that we're going to have fun talking about in the comments and just interacting overall, something I'm going to talk about with really everybody. Want to know what the NFC landscape is looking like, because like I said, Philadelphia won a game today. San Francisco, they're playing right now as I'm recording this video, but don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We're going to come back with more game recaps, more video content, but this is going to do it for today's show. Thank you for watching as always, and now we out.